Hello everybody, welcome to Talk About House. I'm Todd.
I'm Oana.
Okay, today's video is about a statistic that came out. You're probably all painfully aware of it. The premium Americans are paying for a mortgage versus rent hasn't been this big since the housing bubble peaked 17 years ago. So now we're going to go very granular into this and talk about some specific things, but we're talking about acquiring today. Meaning you're deciding today to make a rent versus buy decision. This does not mean if you bought a house 3 years ago, you're completely on the other side of this. And why is that?
Okay. So what you're talking about is you're talking about the cost to purchase a house today. So between the down payment, the closing costs, and the mortgage payment versus the rent payment.
Just a rent payment. Yeah.
Okay. And that's today. That's not 12 months ago or farther back when interest rates were different and that sort of thing.
Yeah, one of the videos we did, we found that if you could have bought a house 3 years ago in Las Vegas, like bought it and owned it, and your mortgage payment would be less than apartment rental in Las Vegas today.
Mm-hmm. Right, because if your mortgage payment is anything under $1,500 a month, then your mortgage payment is less than the going rate for apartments in Vegas.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So the first data from the article with the monthly payment. This is national. It's not in Vegas. We just gave a Vegas example. The monthly payment for a newly purchased home at the end of 22 was $1,176 more than apartment rent. Now, first of all, we're talking about homes and apartments. If they had just done rent, this would have said the monthly payment for a rental single-family home was certainly more than an apartment. It was probably $700 more, right? Because like I know in Vegas, the single-family homes are renting for $2,250. That's the median, and apartments are $1,500. So let's just call it $700 even, right? So to some extent, that's a little misleading because that means that a rental is you only save $400 basically versus and that's probably on the lower end. Okay, it's probably not a high end.
So quick math there. If you're saving $400 a month, by the time you calculate in your tax deduction for your mortgage interest and property taxes, and by the time you calculate the amount that you are paying down your loan, you're actually ahead even on that.
Yeah, and there's a sweet spot. You know, we talk about this quite a bit, and somebody commented in the video that they're surprised we actually acknowledge this mortgage interest deduction. There are some people who their income is such that maybe they don't really pay that much in taxes for whatever reason, but if you get in that point where taxes are a thing, and you find out you're at the 28%, bracket, and you're at actually the marginal income is 28%, so you actually save the 28%. Then it kind of makes sense. Like, okay, my mortgage is this month, but if I'm getting 28% of that back in taxes, does that actually put me less? And then the other thing I always tell people to do is also calculate in principal reduction. Tell them about principal and interest and how that works.
That's exactly what I was saying, that part of that $400 we would have said, well, yes, but you're paying $200 a month toward the principal reduction, so you're building equity. So that's why that you have to kind of look at the whole picture where you're considering how much are you paying down in principal every month. How much are you getting a tax deduction for the interest and the property taxes? And then, there's also less tangible value, and we've talked about this at length, and the less tangible value is that this is your home. No one's going to sell it out from under you. You can paint your kids' room whatever color you want. There's just no other feeling like being in your own home where you feel safe, you feel comfortable, and you have stability. And that stability is something that most of us really crave.
Yeah. Here's a couple. These are let's not talk about financial things right now, because the financial things always seem to get in the way of when people make decisions. Well,
as far as home buying is somewhat of a financial decision, but for the most part, home buying is actually a very emotional decision.
Almost no sellers. Like sellers are usually, I just need to sell the house because I need the money out. I'm going somewhere else. I don't care about the house anymore, right?
So
buyers are not the same.
So here's the interesting thing about sellers. When they're living in it and and their family is there and life is good, it is their home. When they are selling it, it is their house.
Right.
So that subtle
Yeah, that's
difference
funny.
in language tells you that they have already moved on. And this is no longer their home. This is now a house. It is an asset. It's a thing. It's not the warm and fuzzy home. It is a house. It is something completely different than a home.
And the other interesting thing about investors, it's always a rental or investment property.
Mm-hmm.
They always say, yeah, I just grabbed another rental. I just bought another investment property. I'm selling one of my rentals. I'm selling one of my investment properties.
Right.
They don't typically sometimes they use the word house, but they usually rental or investment property.
Very seldom they use the word house, which is, it's very interesting. So language tells you a lot about what's happening in people's heads, and it also tells you about their decision making.
Okay. We've kind of gone over the monetary things.
Mm-hmm.
Rent, you make the payment, you have no risk, meaning you just pay it and it's gone, right? You got to stay there for a month.
You do have a lot of risk with rent, because if the property owner
No, let's talk about that in a second.
Okay.
We're only talking about financial risk.
Okay.
You don't have risk of the home going down in value. You don't have those
Correct.
financial risks.
Correct.
Okay, you don't have those. You potentially have future financial risk with rents going up.
Correct.
Okay, there's a chance rents will go down, but not usually. They usually just go up. They stay the same or go up. With a home, with a house, when you buy your house and you move into it, or apartment or like condo or townhome or whatever, then you have usually a higher payment. You certainly have it now. This is the biggest difference they've had in a long time, because interest rates are up, so the payment's higher, and then home prices are up, so that the whole thing is higher, right? But you have the two things benefiting you, or three things benefiting you: interest deduction, future appreciation, plus you're paying down principal.
Right.
Eventually, you just pay out. The house gets all paid off, right? Okay, those are financial things. Now, Oana, let's talk about the non-financial stability things that quality of life things.
Right. So the quality of life things, and I see it all the time with tenants. First of all, they're not in control of the financial situation, because at their lease renewal, almost always there is a rent increase. They don't have control over that. As far as the property is concerned, I've kind of touched on that before. You can't hang things up. You can't paint whatever color you want. You can't make changes. This is not your home. This is a property that you are renting, that you are borrowing in exchange for money, but you do not get to make choices about it. One of the just really simple things is, something like building an herb garden. That might be important to you. If it's a rental, that's fine. You can do that, but that property owner may decide to go ahead and sell the property, and then the next person who purchases it may decide that they would like to move into the property and you get to leave, or that they will increase the rent more at a different pace than the previous landlord. So all kinds of different things, just simple things like, being able to put a tree in the front yard that maybe, the owner doesn't want there. Just simple things that really improve your quality of life. Other things, appliances. You may want new appliances.
You're not going to put them in somebody else.
No.
Didn't we have one of our tenants do that? They did some ridiculous, like they bought some expensive thing and put it in there, and then they moved and left it.
Right. So it has happened.
I'm trying to remember what it was.
But it's pretty rare, and obviously it's not something that tenants normally do. So maybe you want new appliances. That's not going to happen. Maybe you'd like new flooring. That's not going to happen. Maybe you'd like new countertops. That's not going to happen. So all kinds of things that are quality of life for you. And part of that is that maybe that the landlord would let you do those things, but does it make sense for you to invest your money in the landlord's property and improve his property? Probably not. Most people don't do that. So those are things that are more emotional as far as that, but they do spill over into financial, when it comes to improving the property.
Bought a house in an area zoned for a really good high school here in Las Vegas. The children never attended the high school. They went to private schools. However, maybe 5 or 6 years after buying the house, zoning changed. It was no longer zoned for that really nice Summerlin High School. It's now zoned for some Spring Valley type high school, and which is fine. I don't know academically what the difference is, but I just know people. I've literally had people say, "Yeah, I just want to live zoned for this high school, this elementary school, this middle school."
Yeah.
If you're a renter, you have the flexibility when your kid is on the football team and you find out that they're going to have to play next year at a different school, and they don't tend to not get variances when that happens, when they switch zoning, that you just go, hey, no problem. We're a tenant. We're going to just find another rental and move to a different area, and it'll be painful for a little while, but and you can't do that if you own it. It's a lot harder, right? So those are some of the trade-offs. This next quote is, we already talked about it. Expensive real estate prices and high interest rates are driving the gap between mortgages and rent. Home prices and rents tend to move together. The real outlier here is interest rates. Interest rates have been the biggest change, but people still desire to own. People are still doing it.
Right. Well, and, on the flip side of that is, I didn't quite finish, if you own the house, yes, you get to put in your herb garden and your tree, and you get to paint whatever colors you want, and you get to do whatever changes you want to the house. But the flip side of that is that all of that costs money. So, there is the cost of home ownership from that perspective, that all the repairs are on you, all the home improvements are on you, and that sort of thing. So it is a balancing act. Home ownership is not for everybody, and it's not for everybody at every stage of their lives. So that's something to really consider, because at different stages of our lives, sometimes it makes sense to rent, sometimes it makes sense to own. Most of our lives it makes sense to own, but not all of our lives.
The video we did yesterday talked about how banking lenders could lend less based on what Silicon Valley Bank said. And I sort of don't agree with that. But what was interesting when I read this article, they had a completely different take. So here's the quote. Nadia Evangelou, we quote her a bunch because she talks about this all the time, senior economist and director of research at NAR, previously told Insider that recent bank turmoil that started with Silicon Valley Bank's collapse could actually lead to more buyers entering the housing market. And one of the contentions there, her contention was, people were going to shift assets out of banks into other assets that they feel are better hedge. Because remember, you're not getting much money in your bank. Your inflation's eating it away. People are like, I'm tired of that. Let's go put it in fixed assets. I'm sure that's been happening the last couple of years, because remember that inflation started in 2021, the first time we measured it at 5%.
Right. So this is something we've been talking about for 2 weeks, as far as people saying, hey, maybe banking is not where it's at. Let's take some money and put it in real estate. And we also talked about this, when inflation really started to tick up, because housing tends to keep up with inflation, both on the value side and on the rent side. So maybe you don't quite keep up on the value side, but it'll make up for it on the rent, or vice versa. So you do have kind of this two-pronged approach to dealing with inflation when it comes to real estate, particularly from an investment standpoint. So, this kind of it dovetails with what Miss Angelou said.
Yeah. The next quote, we had expected mortgage rates to come down to the lower range of 6% sometime in the second half of 2023, but now we may see that level in the coming weeks. She said this on March 15th, which was 2 weeks ago, which is interesting because mortgage rates did just go from like 6.6 to 6.4.
Right.
But remember that mortgage rate is not what you get. That's the median average of all lenders of all programs just for the 30-year fixed, which is probably the highest one because all the other ones, the VA loans are lower, 15 or lower. If you have, depending on your credit tier and how much you put down, you get better deals than that.
Right. Depending on, your banking relationship, you might get a better deal than that. If you have automatic mortgage payments out of your account and you have your mortgage from that same bank, you might get a spiff for that. So it really depends on what it is. So we made this point on a video a couple days ago. We have a buyer. They were quoted 6 and change 3 weeks ago. Now they were quoted like
6.1.
right now they were quoted 5.6 from the same lender, same people. Their situation didn't change, but what's happening in the financial markets has changed. So there are a lot of different loans out there and a lot of different interest rates depending on your situation, your market, and everything else having to go with it.
We're not saying you should run out and buy a house. We've never said that. This is just something to consider. Obviously, people are buying every day. There are new home buyers buying every day. You know, some people are just like, I'm going to buy the house. I'm going to live in it for 10 years. I'm not moving. I don't want to get evicted, or I don't want to be told by my landlord. I want to have control. People are willing to pay for that. I believe single family homes are a huge, personally, I think they're a great investment, which is why we haven't sold any of them yet, because there's this gap between household formations and single family homes being built. And it's 6.5 million in the last decade. There's a 6.5 million home shortage of single family homes. And how they're compensating is that investors are building apartment complexes. So more people are moving into apartments than ever because there's more of them than ever. But the single family homes are being, inflated in price because there's not enough, and home builders just aren't going to, like right now they're not building. They're cutting back on how many they're building.
Right.
Yeah.
So interesting thoughts.
Yeah.
What do you think? Does this kind of line up with what you're seeing out there? Do you see something different? Leave us a comment and let us know. We welcome all opinions, so you don't have to agree with us. You're welcome either way. So please like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.